Hey, what's up? Can Luis Arraez or anybody else hit for 400? Been meaning to do this video for a couple weeks. Thought it'd be fitting to do it now with Arraez visiting Boston and the home of the last guy, Teddy Ball game, Ted Williams. Don't like Boston, but he's visiting. Boston's so bad, even Ted Williams didn't like their fans, and he played his whole career though, so that'll tell you something about Boston. But Luis Arraez chasing 400 for the Marlins, hometown team, visiting Fenway Park right now, and I want to dive into, can he do it, or can anybody do it? Nobody has been able to do it since 1941. Ted Williams. Right now, only 5 people since 1941 have even been able to hit 400 through 72 games. Arraez was able to do it through 78. Right now he's at 81 games, right at the halfway mark. And I'll give you some numbers here to compare where he is to where Ted Williams was. Through 81 games, 81 of the team's games, 114 hits for Arraez, 288 at-bats after tonight's play, which they beat the Red Sox tonight, 396 average. Ted Williams was at 96 hits, 242 at-bats, 397. Considerable amount less of at-bats, 46, which will help you, and we'll get into a little bit later. So, what is this hitting 400? You got to hit 40% of the times you got to get a hit. Not hit the ball. You got to hit the ball and get on base without an error. That's so hard to do. When somebody does it 30% of the time, or they're batting 300 or above, those people are considered elite. 502, that's the amount of plate appearances that you have to have per scheduled game. That's 3.1 a game. So you got to have 502 for the season. And baseball is all about numbers. There's all these clubs, 500 home run club, 3,000 hit club, and then there's hitting 400 for a season, which there's not even a club for this. That's how hard it is to do. Since the last time somebody hit 400, which is by far the most exceptional of these clubs, if you want to call them, including the 500 home run club and the 3,000 hit club, those have welcomed at least 20 new members in the time since the most recent 400 club. So with Arraez flirting with this mark, I almost didn't do the video because at one point he got into a little mini slump and he went as low as 378, and the dude had a couple of 5-for-5s mixed in. I think he had 3 in the month of June, in this month, and he's back in the mix now. So just to break down the video for you, we're going to tell you a little bit about Luis Arraez, tell you a little bit about the last guy to do it, Teddy Ball game, Ted Williams. Going to look at the list of batting champions over the years who've gotten close. We're going to take a look at the latest bids every year, a couple of other bids and oddities, and then I want to really look at the 5 serious bids that there's been since 1941. And then kind of talk about what it would take to actually do this. It's so hard, especially today's day and age where everybody's looking for the long ball, and you got all these relief specialists coming in. It's just so tough. So Arraez is actually, not defending, but he's the AL batting champion from last year. All-Star, Silver Slugger. He's a lefty. The Marlins were able to trade Pablo Lopez, which was a long-time starter for them. And the trade seems to be pretty good for both teams. The Twins, as of recording, were in first place, and the Marlins are off to one of their better starts in this century. I mean, I think they haven't started better since 2009. So everybody, and holding the top wild card spot, so seems to be working out for everybody. you know, what kind of sucks is there was this guy's doing this, the team's doing this. We got, you know, young phenom Yuri Perez, who, you know, a lot of people are saying is even a better prospect than Jose Fernandez was. There was only like 10,000 people in the stadium, so we got to work on that as a community down here in South Florida. I'm giving them, you know, the benefit of the doubt until I see them, you know, rip our hearts out again by getting rid of players and not keeping guys. I'm gonna, you know, try to support. Anyways, back to Arraez. He's in his 5th year out of Venezuela, 26 years old. Nickname La Regadera. That's the sprinkler for all you non-Spanish speakers out there, and that's due to the fact that he sprays the ball all over the field. And he has a pedigree for this feat. If you look at his style and history, he's not a power hitter at all. I think he's got 16. He might have hit one more since I typed this up. 17 career homers. He likes to slap the ball to the opposite field over the shortstop, going the other way. And he's not a defensive wizard by any means. And here's a key. And this is the key to the guys who might be able to do this. He walks more than he strikes out. And I don't have the updated numbers through this year, but as of April of this year, there were only 3 major leaguers to have those numbers for their career. Juan Soto, 530 to 472. Luis Arraez, 146 to 135. This is walks and then strikeouts. And Alejandro Kirk, 97 to 94. Those are the only 3 guys in all of baseball that have, for their career, more walks than strikeouts. And that's a key to trying to hit for 400. Some of his idols, Rod Carew, which we'll mention later, and Ichiro. Last year, just to give you some numbers on Arraez, struck out 7% of his at-bats. And that's the kind of stuff you need to have a chance, because any strikeout, it's never going to be a hit, and that's never going to be a walk. That's automatically like the worst possible outcome for your batting average. So he's got that going for him. And at minimum, you know, he's kind of revived this conversation in this different era of baseball, and he's getting closer than probably anybody has in the last 15 years, and you'll see that. And of course, the last guy to do it was Ted Williams, 1941, lefty as well. He did it in his 3rd major league season. Think how long ago this was. We were in the midst of World War II going on. Pearl Harbor was about to happen. Citizen Kane was released. But just think about it. The craziest thing is Hitler was running around terrorizing the world the last time this thing happened. And a couple of interesting notes about Ted Williams. Some of these things I just found out. Mom was Mexican. Head is frozen. May need to bring him back if we're ever going to see another 400 hitter again, unless Arraez or somebody else can change this. And like I mentioned before, he was kind of always at odds with the Boston fans and media. And early in his career, he used to tip his cap. You know, later in his career, even down to like the last time he ever played and he walked off the field, kind of refused to tip his cap because, you know, he thought they were fickle, both the fans and the media, you know, saying he was a hero one day and another day, you know, not really supporting him. So he kind of got fed up with it. Years later, you know, as an older guy, they bought him out, I think, in an All-Star game or something. Maybe when the All-Star game was at Fenway. I'll check that later. And he did a tip of the hat, you know, to the crowd. But
and ever write again that I never tipped my hat to the crowd. Because today, I tip my hat to all the people in New England without question, the greatest sports fans on earth.
I thought that was interesting. That he was at odds with the Boston fans. Dude lost 5 years while serving as a pilot in both World War II and the Korean War. So there's really no telling what his career numbers would look like had he not missed all that time. And then the last time he did it, at that time it wasn't super uncommon. It would happen probably every 2 to 3 years. And in the live ball era since 1920, only 9 times with 6 players. But again, you're looking 1920 to 1941, so every 2 to 3 years or so up to that point. Some of the guys that were able to do it, George Sisler, 1920. He did in 1922. He's from the St. Louis Browns. Roger Hornsby in the same town, St. Louis Cardinals, was able to do it. Ty Cobb did it that year for the Tigers. Harry Helleman for the Tigers in 23. Roger Hornsby again, 24 and 25 for the Cardinals. Bill Terry for the Giants, 1930. And of course, Ted Williams, 1941 for the Boston Red Sox. Must be noted, recently MLB decided to start including stats for the Negro League stats with the Major League stats. So there have been a couple of, there's been multiple 400 seasons in the Negro Leagues that have been added to the record books. The last 3 times that it happened after Williams was in the Negro Leagues: Tatello Vargas, New York Cubans; Josh Gibson, Homestead Grays; and Artie Wilson, Birmingham Black Barons. The stats and record books are not as complete, and they played a lot less games at that time in the Negro Leagues. But those dudes did hit, and in some cases here hit well over 400. And obviously it's become more difficult over time. And I'm going to show you. There's really only a handful of times that it's even threatened to happen. Cool story about Ted Williams. Probably heard it, but he's heading into the last day of the season in 1941, and he's batting .39955, which would have been officially rounded up to 400 on the last day of the season. But he said, "Screw it, man. Put me in the lineup both games. If I'm gonna do it, I want to do it for real. I don't want to be just there." And dude ends up going 6 for 8, and he finishes hitting .406. An interesting thing though that a lot of people probably don't know is back then sacrifice flies were counted as at bats, which they are not today. Under today's rules, and again, some of this stuff is sketchy because it's so long ago and they don't have probably recordings of many of these games or any of these games. According to the record books, he probably would have hit between 411 and 419 based on contemporaneous game accounts. The 1941 season that Ted Williams has is often considered to be the best offensive season of all time, but they gave DiMaggio the MVP, which is just crazy. Best offensive season of all time, but you don't even win the MVP. Again, this is probably considered the best baseball season of all time. DiMaggio does the 57-game hitting streak the same season, so a lot of the experts consider this like the greatest baseball season ever. This was the first of his 6 batting titles. DiMaggio got 291 votes to 254 for Williams. And again, that was on the strength of his 56-game hitting streak and league-leading 125 RBIs. So just to give you sort of the legacy numbers, Ted Williams hit 406, led the league with led the league with 36 home runs, 120 ribbies. DiMaggio hit, in comparison, a paltry 357, 125 RBIs. He hit 30 home runs. So, golden age of hitting, golden age of baseball, idols. Another note, Ted Williams obviously was in the midst of the curse of the Bambino, never won a World Series. The Yankees beat the Dodgers in the World Series that year. You had some other, really good guys playing baseball. Bob Feller, Johnny Vandermeer, who was a few years earlier the only guy to ever throw back-to-back no-hitters, which I don't think will ever be broken, because you have to throw 3 no-hitters to break that, right? What's interesting is the Yankees, these numbers would be terrible today, averaged 12,000 people in the stands per game, which is odd. That year, Ted Williams had an injury in spring training, which limited him to pinch hitting duties. That's why when I gave you those numbers earlier, he had much less at-bats than Arraez. He had an injury and he missed, without playing full, probably half that first month of April, which a lot of experts will say that helped him. One, because it was really cold. Cold weather's not susceptible to good hitting, and it shortened your season. Shortening of the season is kind of something that most of these guys who have sort of even threatened to hit for 400 have gotten. Another thing about Ted Williams is he's probably one of the first guys ever to face a defensive shift, which they've outlawed it now in baseball this year, which I don't agree with. I think, make adjustments, beat people. I was always shocked when people refused to bunt or go the other way. But, they did this on Ted Williams. In part, there's a particular game here they cite, July 23, 1941, hosting the White Sox at Fenway Park. Williams, who wasn't 23 at the time, had hit 327 as a rookie and 344 and 40, and he entered the day at 397. And looking for a different way to defend the eventual American League MVP runner-up, Chicago manager Jimmy Dykes reportedly set his defense in a way that wouldn't look out of place against present day. Well, it would be, because present day is now illegal, but sort of what they used to do to David Ortiz, the little poppy. The third baseman moved to the shortstop usual spot. The shortstop shifted to the right of second base, and the second baseman played out in short right, with the outfielders also sliding that direction. So, sort of like the modern pull shift they do on lefties nowadays. Jesus, I can't talk today. What's wrong with me? But they it had mixed results. He finished 2 for 5, and he did the same thing the next day, and they quickly gave up the strategy. Batting champs who've gotten close but are not part of the major bids. Let's look at the AL and then the NL. So this will give us the final batting average for the year and who got close. What do we call close? If you're not over 370, you're not even in the ballpark. But American League, a lot of people thought in the COVID year, 2020, somebody might be able to do it with the shortened sample size. We had LeMahieu at 364 in the AL and Soto in the NL at 351. So, not really, man. Not really close. Joe Mauer had a 365 year in 2009. Hamilton had a 359 in 2010. And Joe Mauer won a few batting titles. Ichiro had a 350. Noma had a 372 in 2000. Just giving you the AL right now. Wade Boggs won a bunch. I got him up there somewhere. He won a bunch of batting titles. He was in the 360s for a few years here. Like from 83 to 88, Boggs was just slap hitting it all over Fenway. 361, 368, 357, 363, 366. Just crazy. Probably banging him off the green monster. In between, Don Mattingly had one for 343. But other than the big five I'm saving, you had, Rod Carew had a very interesting bid. Besides the 1 year he really assaulted it, he had 359 and 364, 350. But we're not, that's not really cutting it close. Ted Williams had another 369 year. Let's see, anybody in the NL finish even over 360? Chipper Jones, 2008, 364. Barry Bonds had a 362 back in 2004. Barry Bonds had a 370 back in 2002. For my money, that guy was the best modern day hitter, batting eye. Todd Helton, 372. Colorado. This is like, you got 4 years in a row of Colorado in the thin air. And these guys, I think they were greatly... I should have had a Coors Light for that. I think they were greatly assisted by the humidor balls and the thin air and all that. You had Larry Walker won it 3 out of 4 years there. 350, 363, 379, and Todd Helton had a 372. And then, of course, you had a Tony Gwynn era here, which he has one of the major bids we'll get to later. But other than that one, he also had in one of the 4 years in a row that he won the batting title, a 372, a 368, and a 353. And a 370 back in 87. But those are few and far between and not really serious threats, when you're talking about hitting 400. Yeah. Stan Musial had a 376 back in 48. And that's pretty much it. We go back to 41. All right, let's take a look at what the latest bid was every year, or just not every year, but I'll give you some of the better ones, and where they ended up. That's interesting because you'll get some guys with they go kind of deep into the season hitting 400, and then just the wheels come off the whole thing. So let's see what we got here. This year, obviously, Arraez is the deepest. He got to 78 games. He's still hovering around 400, but at 81 games. But the last time he was over was 78. So let's keep that in mind and see where these other people compare towards him. Last year, Eric Hosmer, 20 games. That's like about a fourth of the games that Arraez has gotten to. And he ended up hitting 268 on the year. So 2021, Mike Trout did it through 28 games, 333. 2020, 29 games, Charlie Blackmon. 2019, we had 49 games, Cody Bellinger. He ends up hitting 305. By the way, Blackmon ended up hitting 303. Not even close to 400. The year before that, 2018, only 12 games. Robinson Cano, 303. 2017, 33 games. Ryan Zimmerman ends up hitting 303. None of these are serious bids. 2016, 38 games. Daniel Murphy ends up 347, best batting average of his career. But he didn't even win the batting title, finishing second in the NL and overall to DJ LeMahieu, who hit 348. 2015, 40 games. Miami's own D. Gordon. He did win the batting title, ends up hitting 333 that year. Second batting title by a Marlins player, joining Hanley Ramirez. Looking like we're going to have another one this year with Luis Arraez. We got Gurriel, who is a former AL batting champion, but he did not win that with the Marlins. Let's see, is anybody even over 50 games? Tulowitzki, Chris Johnson, David Wright, Matt Holliday, Robinson Cano. Okay, the last one of Arraez's caliber right now is 15 years ago, June 18, 73 games, Chipper Jones for Atlanta. He finished at 364. He led the majors in batting average, and that's the only batting title of his career, and the first from a Braves player since Terry Pendleton, 1991. Derek Lee, former Marlin as a Cub, did it through 29 games. Let's see, do we have anybody over 50 games? Manny Ramirez, 2001, he got 47 games. Nomar in 2000 had 91 games. Nomar Garcia-Parra, he ends up hitting 372. That's definitely one of the better ones. Tony Fernandez did it through 78 games in 1999 for Toronto, ends up hitting 328, highest batting averages of his career, and it came in his age 37 season, so that's interesting. Larry Walker, Colorado, 1997, made it through 96 games, ends up hitting 366. MVP season, didn't win the batting title thanks to Tony Gwynn, hit 372. Walker would win the batting title the following year. Roberto Alomar, dirtbag, 1996, 59 games for Baltimore, 328. Paul O'Neill for the Yankees, 1994, 63 games, ends up hitting 359. John Olerud had a good one in 1993, 107 games. He finishes at 363. Olerud's 1993 batting title is the only one in Blue Jays history. He hit 54 doubles that year, 9 more than anyone else in the majors, and 12 more than any other AL player. Let's see. Then we got 20 games. Lenny Dykstra had an interesting one in 1990, 55 games, ends up hitting 325. That was his first year in Philly. Carney Lansford, Oakland. This guy didn't even finish at 300, 279. He did it through 55 games. Boggs, 54 games in 86. Rod Carew in 1983 did it through 85 games. He finishes at 339. From Carew's third season in the majors through this year that we're talking about right now, 1983, which was his third to last season in the majors, he hit at least 300 each year. His 339 average in 83 was the last time he'd do that, and he hit 295 and 280 in his final 2 seasons. Yeah, usually most guys are hitting 295, 280 in their prime when they're good. This guy's hanging it up. One of the best hitters ever, Rod Carew. Let's see, is anybody else serious here? Over 50 games. And Rod Carew's all over this list. Did it multiple times. 56 games, 71 games, 85 games, 40 games. Anybody else? Anybody else serious about hitting 400 here? I see a lot of 20 games, 22 games, 23 games. Hank Aaron, 60 games. Willie Mays, 54 games. We're in the 50s now. But nobody's really. Stan Musial, we talked about 1948. He did it through 76 games. 74 games for Tommy Holmes. Ends up at 352. So that's pretty much the latest bids every year. Ted Williams actually hit 400 a couple other times in his seasons, but he didn't have enough at bats. Obviously, he did it once in 52 and 6 games, and once in 54 and 37 games. Joey Votto did it in the second half of the 2016 season. Another great hitter who just came back recently for the Red Hot A's. He ended up hitting 326 that year, but if you just take the second half of the year, he did hit over 400. All right, so I've kind of separated the 6 most serious bids here. Stan Musial, 1948. Talked about it a few times. I'll give you the guy's career average so you know if this is fluky or not. 331 hitter. So this guy was always a good hitter. And this is just so you can see what was going on at the time. Indian pacifist and leader Mahatma Gandhi is murdered. Israel is declared as an independent state. First Polaroid camera goes on sale. This is relevant today. The World Health Organization, also known as the WHO, was established. The founding of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea took place. Treaty of Brussels. Summer Olympics in London. And US and UK began a massive airlift of food and water and medicine to the citizens of West Berlin following the Soviet blockade. That's the stuff going on in 1948 when Stan Musial hits 376, misses the national Triple Crown by just one home run. He hit much better on the road, 415, than he did in his home games, 334 at the cavernous Sportsman's Park. He hovered over 400 into mid-July and then saw the pace drop from a 403 average in the first half to a more human 351 after the break. Here's a little sign of the times for you. Musial decided not to appear in cigarette advertisements after pressure from... after he received some pressure about it. He led the league in average, hits, doubles, triples, total bases, slugging percentage. Won the batting title by a 43-point margin, on-base percentage, and that was the 138-point slugging percentage margin, being the largest gap since Rogers Hornsby's 1925 season. Became, at the time, the first NL player to win 3 MVP awards. This is the luck of the law. Luck of the draw. He hit a home run during a rainout, and of course, that stat didn't count. But if that would have counted, he would have won. He would have won the Triple Crown, batting average, home runs, and runs batted in. All right, that's 1948. The next bid for hitting for 400, it's the man himself again, Ted Williams. He hits 388 that season. He is a career 344 hitter. What was going on in 1957 when he did this? Eisenhower sent federal troops to Arkansas to uphold the court-ordered integration of public schools. And the Little Rock Nine bravely integrated Little Rock's Central High School, September 25th, 1957. In October, the Soviet Union launched the first space satellite, the Sputnik, and the USSR tests its first successful ICBM. Leave It to Beaver premieres on CBS. And rest in peace, Humphrey Bogart, that year as well. So this is Ted Williams' age 38 season, and he finds out firsthand how hard it is to hit 400 again. First time he drops under 400 is June 6th. And he had a 295 average in June, lowest average of any month that season. And he finished just 5 hits. That's how close he really was. If there's 5 of those at-bats that drop in, goes through the hole, goes over somebody's head, and obviously not an error. He hits 400. So he was 5 hits shy. Okay, 1977, the next bid, Rod Carew. He's up there waiting to take some hacks as well. Here's a couple cool things about 1977. It's the year I was born. Star Wars opens in the theaters. The first Apple II computers go on sale. TV miniseries Roots is aired. First commercial flight of the Concorde. Rest in peace to Elvis Presley. Dies at the age of 42. Damn, that's younger than I am right now. Roman Polanski is arrested and charged. The New York City blackout lasts for 25 hours. Alaskan oil pipeline is completed. Quebec adopts French as the official language. And we have the UK Jubilee celebrations. That's some of the stuff going on. All right, what's going on with Rod Carew in 1977? He went until July 10th, 85 games. He remained the latest 400 batting average since 1942. Like I said when I was doing the other list earlier, long bids. He had 2 of the 7 85-plus game bids, and no other hitter had multiple such seasons. And when we get to Brett and Gwynn's, we'll talk more about a smaller sample size. That helps. Usually that'll help. If the less at bats you have, the easier it is to do this, because the longer you go at it, the odds are going to catch up to you, and it's going to be harder. So a lot of these guys always miss some time due to injury, obviously. In Gwynn's case, the strike shortened season. But that's what's so impressive about the season. He played the whole season, played nearly every day, finished with 694 plate appearances. Remember I told you got to have 502. 616 at-bats. Only 2 players have ever hit 400 with more plate appearances than 694. Roger Hornsby, 1922, and Bill Terry, 1930. He hit 441 over the final 31 games of that year to finish just shy of history. He had a bad July, 304, which that's fine for anybody else, 304. But that was the biggest culprit in the Panamanian Star coming up short. He was 7 hits shy of 400. And that was the highest since Ted Williams' 388 in 1957. He won the MVP, 200 career high with 239 hits, which at the time was the most by any player since 1930. 100 RBIs for like a guy that's like a slap hitter. And you can find them on the cover of Time magazine with the caption, "Baseball's best hitter." And then we just go another 3 years to the year where I got to this country. George Brett, 390. Brett was a 305 career hitter. Did I give you Brett's career? I'm sorry, Carew's career hitting? 328. So in 1980, here's some of the stuff that's going on. U.S. defeats the Soviet Union in ice hockey in what's labeled the Miracle on Ice. Mount St. Helens eruption on May 18th in Washington, killing 57. The Iran-Iraq war begins in September of 1980. CNN, cable news network, began broadcasting on June 1st. 3M begins sales of its latest product, Post-it notes, invented by Arthur Fry and Spencer Silver. Former Beatle John Lennon is shot to death. Severe summer heat wave in southern U.S. causes 1,117 deaths in 20 states. U.S. passes... Jesus, I can't talk today. U.S. passes crude oil windfall profits tax act. to tax high profits by oil companies. Fire destroys the MGM Hotel in Vegas, and the killer clown John Wayne Gacy Jr. sentenced to death for the murder of 33 boys and young men. So that's all the stuff going on. 1980, Brett wins the MVP and hits 390, which is a modern record for third baseman. His average was at, or this is what hurts on this one, it was at or above 400 as late in the season as September 19th. And the country was closely following his quest to bat 400 for the entire season. Only better average than this since Ted is the next one that we're going to give you after this one. Brett had 449 at-bats, mostly due to time he missed in the beginning of the season. He appeared in just 117 of the 162 games. Still managed to have 118 RBIs, which I think it's one of the few times that anybody's had more RBIs than games. It's the first instance of somebody in more than 100 games averaging more than an RBI since Walt Drapo, 30 seasons prior. Started slowly, 259 in April, 329 in May. That got him over 300. In June, 472, and he got up to 337. But he played his last game for a month on June 10th, not returning to the lineup until after the All-Star break, July 10th. And then in July, after being off for a month, he played in 21 games and hit an unconscionable 494, 42 for 85, which that raised him up to 390. He started a 30-game hit streak July 18th, which lasted through August 19th, and then he went 3 for 3. During those 30 games, he hit 467. His high mark for the season came a week later when he was at 407 on August 26th, after he went 5 for 5 on a Tuesday night in Milwaukee. He batted 430 for the month of August, so this guy's doing like a late season onslaught as he crescendos. He was at 403 with 5 weeks to go, and for the first 3 hot months of June, July, and August, he hit 459, and most of it after a return from a month-long injury. He missed another 10 days in early September and hit just 290 for the month. Again, as late as September 19th, he was over 400, and then he had a 4 for 27 slump. Dipped to 384 on September 27th with a week to play. And in the final week, he did another push, went 10 for 19, which included going 2 for 4 in the final game of the season on October 4th, and he ended up at 390. He's the latest on this list to flirt with 400. He was 5 hits shy. And then the last guy to really attack this, and it's a shame because a lot of people think he may, I'm wearing the jersey here in commemoration, rest in peace, Tony Gwynn. 1994. What was going on in 1994? O.J. Simpson trial was going on. FIFA World Cup in Chicago starts off in Chicago. Brazil wins that. Nancy Kerrigan is attacked. And, of course, baseball has a strike, and they do not finish their season. Tony Gwynn hits 394. Tony Gwynn was a 338 career hitter. And this is the highest batting average anybody has had since Ted Williams hit 400. If you would have gotten over 400 and the season would have been shortened, I'm sure there would have been an asterisk. It just would have been interesting to see if they didn't stop the season, if you would have gotten to it in time. But, we'll never know. And as it was, he finished 3 hits shy of hitting 400. And another historical chase, by the way, that was lost this strike-shortened season was Matt Williams, who had 43 home runs, and that at that time was putting him on pace to challenge Roger Maris for the single-season home run record of 61. Of course, that has been broken multiple times over since then, but at the time, this was, a legitimate threat to that record. Also, the Expos had the best record in baseball that year, and who knows what an extended playoff run, what impact that would have had on and a possible World Series on that city, who obviously lost their team to the Washington Nationals. A lot of media always would say that Tony Gwynn was the kind of slap hitter kind of guy that could do it, and he had a legitimate shot that year, but unfortunately we will never know. And then you had 1999 Larry Walker, which was a 313 hitter. He hit 379. And in 99, of course, what was going on? Y2K, Columbine, Napster was released, SpongeBob premieres. Speaking of steroids, Lance Armstrong wins his first Tour de France. Vladimir Putin comes into power. Clinton's impeached. Osama bin Laden sets his Al-Qaeda terrorist base in Afghanistan. He's on the FBI's most wanted list following involvement in American embassy bombings in Africa. So, 1999, Larry Walker hits 379. Check out this batting average at home in the thin air. 461 at Coors Field. A full 175 points higher than his clip on the road, 286. So that's telling me something about Coors Field. He had a 418 Charger with the final 2 months of the season, and that put Walker within range. Pretty consistent. His lowest mark was 326 in July. And Larry Walker was plagued by injuries for the first several years of his career. His 461 batting average at Coors is the highest home batting average since the Elias Sports Bureau began tracking home road splits in 1974. So yeah, there was definitely something about those Coors Field guys. And then we got Arraez at 327 career hitter for comparison. So, from reading and analyzing some of the guys who have done it or gotten close, like I said, it always seems to include a shortening of the season somehow to create a smaller sample size, because hitting 400, you got to have some luck, and there's some flukiness. So the smaller the size, the more you are apt to have that. The more at-bats you have, the more likely you are to go back down to the baseline. So, some of these guys who miss time for injuries really have a weird... nobody wants to be injured and miss time, but it ends up being like an advantage. The aforementioned walks versus Ks is another thing that's super important. And, it really has to be like a line drive, slap hitter, because fly balls are the worst that you can have for this. Unless they leave the park. And grounders can help you if you are sort of a speedster, but Arraez isn't. We do have an extra 8 games, so the modern day schedule does not help Arraez. 162 games versus 154 that were played up until 1961. He does not have a high exit velocity on his hits. But he does seem to have a thing where he hits it hard enough to get it over the infielders, but not hard enough to get it to the outfielders. So that tends to help him. Overall, lefties also seem to have an advantage as they get better looks at the righties most of the time. A little bit closer to first base, but like I said, he's not really a speedster. And then I'll give you a quote from one of my favorite baseball players here of all time. When asked if he thinks somebody can hit 400, Pete Rose. Pete Rose said, I think a guy could hit 400, but I don't think anybody in the world can get 200 for 500. I think you can get 350 at bats, 300 at bats, and hit 400. But to get 200 for 500, meaning 200 hits out of 500 at bats, that's 400. Williams had 456 at bats in 1941, which at first seemed to confirm Rose's points. On the other hand, Williams went into the last day of the season batting slightly below 400, only going 6 for 9 in a doubleheader against the Philadelphia Athletics, boosting his average to 406. For Williams, the shortened season may have helped, but those last 9 at-bats helped even more. So, can Luis Arraez do this? Can anybody do this? Based on history, probably no. But, there's some recent rule changes. The bases shorter, the shifts, the base is a little bit closer, the exaggerated shifts outlawed, but I don't think the shifts really ever helped or hurt Arraez. But what better way to follow the chase with the local team, who's we got some nice young hitters besides him on that team and a nice young staff, and they're like 13, 14 games over 500 right now, holding a playoff spot. So I'm hoping he can do it. Let's keep an eye on it. It's just cool when somebody's kind of chasing one of these historic things that nobody's done in a long time. And we're talking about 59. It's been like over 80 years since somebody did it. So, who knows? Maybe he can do it. Maybe he can't. I'm hoping he does. Anyways, guys, thanks for watching. Sub it up. We'll see you next time. Peace.